Beloved brothers and sisters, children of the light, wanderers in a restless world and seekers of a peace that the world cannot give, I invite you to enter for a moment into the silent chambers of your own heart. I invite you to listen not to my voice, not to the noise of your mind, but to that gentle whisper that speaks when all earthly sounds are stilled. In that quiet, where the soul discovers its true hunger, we find again the eternal truth that God never ceases to draw near to His children. He pours out His graces with a generosity that exceeds every human measure. But to receive this abundant gift, we must open the door of our hearts with simple acts of trust. It is in this spirit that I speak to you today about a small gesture that carries immense spiritual strength, a gesture at once humble and profound, sleeping with a rosary in your hand. Many dismiss such an action as sentimental or naive, an outdated practice from a past age. Yet in reality, this gesture hides a mystery, one that touches directly upon the deepest needs of the human heart. For the rosary is not an ornament, not a charm, not a decoration. It is a chain of grace, a robe fashioned of heavenly mystery, descending from the heart of God Himself, offered to every soul who longs for light in the night of this world. When you sleep with the rosary, you do not simply hold beads. You hold mysteries. You hold prayer. You hold protection. You hold hope. You hold the hand of the mother who never abandons her children, and through her, you touch the very mercy of Christ. To sleep with the rosary is to allow grace to enter the most vulnerable hours of your existence. Night is the time of human frailty. It is the time when your body lies still, when your mind sinks into dreams, when your thoughts lose control, when fears can rise unbidden, and when the enemy whispers with cunning subtlety. But night is also the hour in which God often works most quietly. It is the hour of annunciations, of revelation, of whispers from heaven, of the soul's intimate rest in the arms of its Creator. When you sleep with the rosary, the mysteries of Christ accompany you into this hidden realm where the daylight of reason does not reach, and your sleep becomes an open window through which the breath of the Spirit enters. This simple gesture is an act of surrender. It is a declaration to heaven: Lord, even when I sleep, I am yours. Even when I cannot form words, let my heart pray. Even when I am unconscious, let my spirit rest in you. In a world that idolizes control over circumstances, control over outcomes, control over one's own image, there is something radically humble in falling asleep with a rosary. It says, I am not my own master. I am not the Lord of my destiny. I am a child of God, and even in my sleep, I entrust myself to His loving care. Each bead becomes a silent flame. Each Hail Mary breathed before the heart drifts into rest becomes a soft lantern glowing in the night of the soul. And even when your lips cease to move, the rosary continues to speak. For prayer is not merely words, it is presence, it is relationship, it is intimacy. To sleep with the rosary is to allow the mysteries of Christ and the maternal tenderness of Mary to watch over you as guardians in the hours when you cannot guard yourself. There is something sacred in the posture of a person who falls asleep holding a rosary. It resembles a child falling asleep while still holding the hand of a parent. It is the image of trust in its purest form. You may fall asleep worried, tired, wounded, anxious, or even spiritually cold, but the rosary in your hand is a bridge between your weakness and God's strength. It testifies that even when your spirit is fatigued and your heart is weary, you desire God. And God never fails to respond to such desire. Grace flows most abundantly when we acknowledge our poverty and open ourselves to Him with childlike simplicity. Sometimes the greatest battles in the spiritual life are fought precisely at night. Thoughts of discouragement, temptations of despair, wounds reopened, memories that disturb. The heaviness of loneliness, these often come like shadows in the late hours. But when the rosary is in your hand, you do not fight alone. Every bead becomes like a soldier standing guard. Every mystery is a light that darkness cannot extinguish. Every silent prayer, though unfinished, becomes an invocation. Mother, stay with me. Christ, protect me. Angels of God surround me. And with this shield, night loses its terrors. The demons of anxiety retreat. The storms of fear grow quiet. And the soul sleeps under the mantle of heaven. Do not underestimate how deeply this gesture touches the heart of God. He delights in small acts of faith. To human eyes, it may seem insignificant that a person sleeps with a rosary, but to God, nothing is insignificant when done with love. And the God who noticed the widow's coin, who counted every tear Mary Magdalene shed, who saw Nathanael praying under the fig tree, also sees your hand clasped around those beads in the silence of night. He sees your desire to remain near him even when your strength fails, and he responds with a generosity that surpasses your imagination. Grace flows wherever humility opens a door. Grace flows where love is expressed in small, hidden acts. Grace flows where souls acknowledge their dependence on God. This is why sleeping with a rosary invites a cascade of graces. It is a gesture of hidden love, and God never refuses such love. It becomes like a seed planted in the soil of your soul, watered by the dew of the night, and in time it bears fruit, peace, clarity, courage, purity, perseverance, healing. There are times when a person feels spiritually dry, unable to pray, unable to meditate, unable even to lift their thoughts toward God. They feel blocked, empty, distant. In such seasons, the rosary becomes not a burden, but a refuge. To hold it while sleeping is to say, Lord, I have no words, but I give you my heart. It is to admit weakness without shame. It is to seek God with the last strength that remains. And God, who bends low to lift the brokenhearted, pours out his compassion abundantly. The rosary is also a silent teacher. When you sleep with it, grace works invisibly in the depths of your heart, forming you, purifying you, softening what is hardened, healing what is wounded. You may wake up unaware of what occurred in your sleep, but your soul knows. Over time, you begin to notice subtle transformation. You grow more patient, more peaceful, more sensitive to God's voice, more immune to temptations that once seemed overwhelming. It is as if Mary herself had spent the night praying over you, whispering truths into your soul that reshape your inner world. And indeed, she does exactly that, for she is not a distant figure of history, but a living mother. And the rosary is her embrace. To sleep with the rosary is to place yourself in the school of Mary, even during the hour of rest. She who pondered the mysteries of God in her heart teaches you to do the same. She who carried Christ in her womb helps you carry him in your soul. She who stood beneath the cross gives you strength to bear your trials. She who rejoiced in the resurrection helps you hope even when all seems lost. She who waited in prayer for the Holy Spirit teaches you to wait with patience and trust. With the rosary in your hand, you fall asleep under the gaze of a mother who loves with perfect tenderness and perfect fidelity. The modern world mocks such tenderness. It mocks such trust. It mocks prayer, silence, simplicity. But the human heart knows better. Beneath the noise and distraction, beneath the artificial lights and restless screens, beneath the illusions of self-sufficiency, the human heart still longs for what is real. It longs for God. It longs for meaning. It longs for peace. No technology can replace the warmth of divine love. No entertainment can fill the void of an unanchored soul. No ideology can satisfy the thirst of the Spirit. The rosary, held in the dark quiet of night, reminds us of this eternal truth. It anchors us again to what truly matters: God's presence, God's love, God's mercy. The rosary is a chain that binds the soul to heaven, but it is not a chain of slavery, it is a chain of freedom. For when you sleep holding it, you declare that you belong not to anxiety, not to fear, not to sin, not to the world, not to your past, not to your wounds, not to your weaknesses. You declare that you belong to God, and when God possesses your soul, nothing can enslave you. Imagine the angels who behold a person sleeping with a rosary. They see a soul wrapped in prayer, even in unconsciousness. They see a battlefield where heaven fights quietly for a heart that trusts. They see a harmony between human frailty and divine strength. They surround such a person with joy, for they know the power of this gesture. They know how fiercely Mary intercedes. They know how tenderly Christ responds. There are moments when you may fall asleep troubled, but wake up strangely consoled. This is no accident. This is grace at work in the silence of night. It is as if heaven labors while you rest, healing what you cannot heal, strengthening what you cannot strengthen, arranging what you cannot arrange. The rosary is like a key that opens the heart to this nocturnal work of God. It invites him in. It gives him permission to act, and he acts with divine delicacy. Consider the person who goes to bed with sorrow, fear, or anger. These emotions, if left unattended, seep into the soul. But when the rosary is held in their hand, the very act becomes a confession. Lord, I cannot carry this alone. And God, who is always attentive to the humble, takes the burden upon himself. You sleep, but grace keeps vigil. Even the physical touch of the rosary carries meaning. We are not pure spirits. God created us with bodies, senses, tangible needs. He speaks to us through physical signs, water in baptism, oil in confirmation, bread and wine in the Eucharist. The rosary too is a physical sign, a sacramental conduit of grace. Holding it as you sleep engages your whole being, mind, body, spirit in prayerful surrender. The beads resting between your fingers become like seeds planted in the soil of your dreams. Seeds that will flower into virtues. The rosary is also a reminder of the continuity of prayer across time. People have prayed these same mysteries for centuries. Saints, martyrs, religious, parents, children, the elderly, the suffering, the joyful, all have held the rosary, have whispered its prayers, have found refuge in it. When you sleep with the rosary, you join this vast family of faith. You become part of a lineage of trust. You unite your heart to countless souls who, throughout history, have sought God with the same gesture. You become small within a great communion, yet infinitely precious in the eyes of God. This chain of prayer spans the world each day. Somewhere at this very moment, someone is praying the rosary. Somewhere, someone is holding it with trembling fingers. Somewhere, someone is falling asleep, clutching it in hope or in pain. And heaven hears them all. You are not alone. When you sleep with the rosary, you enter this river of prayer that never ceases to flow before the throne of God. The world often treats the night as a time for distraction, for escapism, for noise. Many fall asleep numbed by screens, intoxicated by entertainment, burdened by worries, trapped in the endless cycle of thoughts that weary the mind. But imagine instead falling asleep with the mysteries of Christ next to your heart. Imagine the last thing your mind touches before surrendering to sleep being the presence of God. Imagine how this shapes your dreams, your rest, your subconscious, your inner peace. The rosary becomes a gentle transition from the chaos of the day into the stillness of God's presence. To sleep with the rosary is also to reclaim the night for God. It is to sanctify the hours the world often gives to darkness. It is to transform sleep from mere biological necessity into a spiritual encounter. It is to let grace penetrate even the rhythms of your body. Sleep ceases to be wasted time. It becomes a continuation of prayer. You may ask yourself, is it really so powerful? Can such a small act truly draw down graces from heaven? Yes, because grace does not depend on the greatness of the act, but on the greatness of the God who responds. And he responds with tender love to every gesture of trust. If a child falls asleep holding a parent's hand, no one asks, does this change anything? Of course it does. It brings comfort. It brings security. It brings peace. It brings the assurance that they are not alone. In the same way, the soul that falls asleep holding a rosary knows even without words that God is near, that Mary is mother, that heaven is watching with love. Sleeping with the rosary is an act that continues to echo even after you wake. You rise with a heart more anchored, more recollected, more aware of God's presence. Your day begins differently. The first sensation your hand remembers upon waking is the touch of the beads, the memory of prayer. How many people wake with anxiety, checking their phones as if salvation could come through pixels? But the soul that wakes with the rosary rises, already oriented toward God. It begins the day not in distraction, but in grace. Perhaps you have struggled to pray or to persevere in the spiritual life, or to fight temptation, or to find peace. Begin simply, sleep with a rosary. Let this small gesture be your refuge. Let it be your silent cry to heaven. Let it be your offering of trust. Let it be your shield. Let it be your teacher. Let it be the anchor that steadies you in the storms of life. And watch how God, who sees what is hidden, pours out His grace like rain on dry earth. For the rosary is a gift, not only for the strong, but especially for the weak. It is for those who are tired, struggling, discouraged. It is for those who long for God, but feel far from Him. It is for those who cannot find words. It is for those who feel overwhelmed by sin or sorrow. It is for those who seek peace in a world that has forgotten silence. It is for those who know that only God can satisfy the hunger of the heart. Hold it as you fall asleep. Let Mary watch over your rest. Let Christ's mysteries guard your dreams. Let heaven surround your weakness with strength. Let grace descend upon your soul like gentle rain. And you will discover that this simple act, done in faith, opens a floodgate of divine mercy. To continue, my dear brothers and sisters, reflect on the quiet transformation that happens when the rosary becomes not just an object you hold, but a presence that accompanies you. Over time, the beads resting in your hand become like a heartbeat of prayer, echoing softly even when your mind is silent. You begin to sense that prayer is not something you simply do, but something you enter, something that embraces you. The rosary becomes like a gentle river flowing through the night of your soul, carrying away the sediment of fear and washing it in the clarity of divine love. There are moments when life feels overwhelming, when responsibilities tighten around it, heart like cords, when uncertainty clouds your path, when grief hovers like a shadow. In such moments, at the end of the day, the rosary offers you a place to rest, not an escape, not a denial of your burdens, but a sanctuary where your soul can breathe. To sleep with it is to place your struggles into hands greater than yours. It is to admit that your strength has limits, but God's does not. Sometimes grace works slowly, like dawn gradually overcoming night. You may not notice the change immediately, but after weeks or months of sleeping with a rosary, something within you begins to shift. You wake with fewer anxieties gripping your mind. Respond to difficulties with more patience. You find yourself less drawn to distractions, less shaken by small irritations, more anchored in what is essential. Such transformations are not accidental. They are the quiet work of grace, received through humility, nourished through trust, and deepened through perseverance. The rosary is also a school of truth. When you fall asleep holding it, you fall asleep holding the life of Christ. You fall asleep with the Annunciation, with God's first whisper of hope to humanity. You fall asleep with the Nativity, with the humility of a God who became a child. You fall asleep with the baptism in the Jordan, with the revelation of the Father's love. You fall asleep with the cross, with the greatest act of love the world has ever known. You fall asleep with the resurrection, with the triumph of life over death. These mysteries enter your dreams in ways you cannot measure. They shape your inner world with divine truth, forming your soul according to the pattern of Christ. We often underestimate how deeply we are influenced by what surrounds us as we sleep. If you fall asleep with noise, you wake with noise in your heart. If you fall asleep with anger, you wake with heaviness. If you fall asleep with fear, you wake with anxious thoughts. But if you fall asleep with the rosary, you allow peace to enter, while your defenses are down. You allow healing to begin where your consciousness cannot interfere. You allow God to reshape you in the stillness of night. Consider how many saints throughout history clung to the rosary as they slept. Some held it in times of persecution, knowing it was their only earthly consolation. Some held it while suffering illness, their bodies growing weaker, but their souls growing stronger. Some held it in exile, far from their homes, yet never far from God. Some held it during war, famine, imprisonment, and many held it simply out of love, out of habit, out of a desire to end the day with God's presence close. When you sleep with the rosary, you imitate this great cloud of witnesses who understood, better than the world, that the simplest gestures can open the widest doors to grace. The rosary is a weapon, but it is also a cradle. It is a sword, but it is also a lullaby for the soul. It is a shield, but it is also a comfort. It stands firm against the forces of darkness, yet it rests gently in your hand as you lie down to sleep. There is a paradox here, a beautiful mystery, that something so small, so quiet, so delicate can hold such spiritual power. This is the logic of God, who uses the weak to confound the strong, the small to humble the mighty, the hidden to transform the visible. When you sleep with the rosary, you place your night under the sign of Mary's motherhood. And motherhood does not sleep. It keeps watch. It intercedes. It protects. It comforts. Just as a mother watches over her child in the night, so Mary watches over all who entrust themselves to her. She whispers prayers over them. She shields them from harm. She holds their hearts close to hers. What fear can survive such love? What darkness can withstand such light? Perhaps you have felt abandoned in life, or misunderstood, or invisible. Perhaps you carry wounds no one sees. The rosary held in sleep becomes a silent assurance that you are not forgotten. Mary sees you, Christ knows you. Heaven watches over you with tenderness deeper than any human affection. Even when the world fails you, God does not. Even when people disappoint you, grace does not. Even when you feel alone, the rosary in your hand proclaims that you are held in a divine embrace. There is a spiritual tenderness in the way the rosary accompanies even those who cannot pray. The elderly who forget words, the sick who cannot concentrate, the exhausted who fall asleep mid-prayer, the sorrowful whose hearts are too heavy to speak. God receives their silent holding of the rosary as a prayer more beautiful than eloquence, for He listens not to the brilliance of the mind, but to the sincerity of the heart. The rosary becomes the voice of those who have no words left. It becomes prayer for the weary, strength for the weak, light for the blind, hope for the despairing. If you feel unworthy to pray, if shame has silenced you, if guilt weighs on your soul, the rosary offers you a way to return to God without fear. Hold it as you sleep. Let it rest against your heart. That alone is a prayer. That alone is an act of faith. That alone is enough to open the door to mercy. Grace rushes where humility opens even the smallest crack. And so night after night, this gesture becomes a rhythm of trust. Each evening, as you prepare for rest, you choose once again to place your life in God's hands. You choose peace over fear. You choose prayer over noise. You choose light over darkness. You choose intimacy with heaven over the illusions of the world. Over time, this choice shapes you. It becomes the foundation of a spiritual life, anchored not in emotion, not in extraordinary experiences, but in steady fidelity. There is a stability that comes from sleeping with the rosary, a spiritual grounding that strengthens the soul. Life may shake you, but you do not fall as easily. Trials may come, but you do not despair as quickly. Temptations may whisper, but you do not listen as readily. You have anchored your nights in God, and so your days become rooted in peace. The rosary also teaches the heart to desire what is holy. As you sleep holding these beads, the mysteries of Christ sink deeper into your soul. You begin to love what He loves, desire what He desires, reject what He rejects. A subtle purification takes place in your affections. Attachments that once seemed irresistible begin to loosen. Habits that once enslaved you begin to weaken. The heart is gently freed, not through force, but through the slow, steady action of grace received in faith. Night is the time when God rewrites the story of your heart. And the rosary is the ink He uses. Grace does not always come like thunder. It often comes like dew settling quietly on the soil. You do not feel it as it happens, but in time you see the fruit. You see that you are more patient with others, more forgiving, more compassionate, more attentive to God's presence. You see that peace no longer flees you as it once did. You see that worry has lost some of its grip. This is the hidden work of nights spent in the gentle presence of the Rosary. Even death, the final night of life, becomes less frightening for the soul accustomed to sleeping in prayer. The Rosary held in life becomes the Rosary held in the last moments, the final gesture of trust before entering eternity. For the person who has fallen asleep hundreds of times with a Rosary in their hand, the final sleep becomes simply another surrender into God's arms. Mary, who stood at every nightly vigil, will surely stand at that ultimate one. My dear brothers and sisters, continue to allow this holy chain of grace to accompany you, especially in the silent hours. Let it rest in your hand, on your pillow, over your heart. Let it sanctify your dreams and reshape your spirit. Let its mysteries flow through your sleep like gentle waters, washing, healing, renewing. Let this humble gesture become a constant invitation for heaven to enter your night and remain with you until the dawn. And so, as the night covers the earth with its veil, consider how your soul is never abandoned to darkness. When the Rosary rests within your grasp, there is a sacred intimacy in this gesture, a tenderness that escapes even your own awareness. You may not comprehend the magnitude of what occurs while you sleep, but heaven does. Angels understand the language of silent surrender. They see how even the smallest act of trust becomes an opening for divine power. They rejoice in it because they know how freely God pours His grace upon a humble soul. The Rosary you hold in sleep becomes like a sanctuary built within your own heart. Even if storms rage in your thoughts, during the day uncertainty, fear, anger, temptations, discouragement, the night grants you a place where grace can quietly rebuild what the world has tried to tear down. It is during sleep that many spiritual wounds begin to heal because the noise of the world is finally silenced and the soul can rest in God without resistance. The Rosary, resting against your heart, becomes like a balm placed upon unseen injuries. Think of how a wounded person needs rest for healing. A broken bone, a torn muscle, a fevered body all require sleep for recovery. But the soul too carries wounds, disappointments, heartbreaks, betrayals, anxieties, sins, memories that ache. And yet the soul often tries to heal itself without rest, without surrender, without God's touch. But when you sleep with the Rosary, you allow heaven to bind those wounds. You permit divine love to enter the very places where you are hurting even. Those places you have not yet found the courage to reveal in prayer. Grace sees what you conceal. Grace reaches what you avoid. Grace heals what you cannot touch. There is a night within the heart that no human can escape, the night of uncertainty, of not knowing what the future holds, of confronting the fragile nature of life. But when the Rosary rests in your hand, you are not left alone in that inner night. You carry a light, the same light that guided Mary through her trials, the same light that shone upon the mysteries of Christ's life, the same light that conquers every shadow. This light does not always remove the night, but it transforms it. It turns fear into trust, sorrow into hope, and loneliness into communion. Each bead is like a step along a path. During the day, you walk with your own strength, but at night, when you sleep holding the Rosary, the path continues without effort. It is as if Mary herself guides your soul gently forward, one small step at a time, even while your body rests. You advance spiritually without knowing it. You grow closer to Christ without perceiving it. You draw nearer to holiness while simply resting under heaven's watchful gaze. Many people search desperately for peace, Yet they overlook the simple gestures through which God often grants it. They chase distractions, hoping to numb the ache of the heart. They rush into noise, hoping to drown out inner unrest. They fill their lives with activity, trying to outrun the silence within. But the soul does not heal by running. The soul heals by surrendering. And the rosary held during sleep is a quiet surrender, pure, gentle, hidden, but powerful. In the silence of your sleep, God works without interruption. He does not need your words. He does not need your thoughts. He does not need your strength. He needs only your openness, your willingness to let Him enter. The rosary is the sign of that willingness. It is the open door through which divine grace enters the chambers of your spirit. When you hold the rosary as you fall asleep, you proclaim with your body what your soul may not be able to put into words. Lord, remain with me. And He does. He remains with you in the darkness, in the silence, in the vulnerability of sleep. He sends His peace like a gentle wind through the corridors of your soul. He touches what is wounded. He whispers to what is afraid. He strengthens what is weak. He rekindles what is fading. He breathes life where you feel empty. You may believe that prayer is effective only when you are awake, conscious, engaged. But the truth is that God's work is not limited by your awareness. He can bless you in your sleep, just as He blesses you in your waking hours. Holding the rosary is a sign that you invite Him to do exactly that. It is an acknowledgement that your spiritual life does not end when your eyes close. Rather, it continues, deepens, and sometimes blossoms in the hidden hours when the world around you is forgotten. Think of the serenity that descends upon a child who falls asleep in the arms of a loving parent. The child does not understand everything. They do not analyze or articulate their trust. They simply rest, and their rest is complete. That is what happens to the soul who sleeps with the rosary. You rest in the arms of God. You are held by love that does not sleep. You are surrounded by a presence that does not fade. You are protected by a motherhood and a kingship that do not abandon those who call upon them. Grace not only flows, it multiplies. One night of sleeping with a rosary becomes a habit. A habit becomes a way of life. A way of life becomes a path of holiness. And holiness, when rooted in such humble fidelity, begins to radiate quietly into the lives of those around you. You become more patient with others. You listen more attentively. You forgive more quickly. You carry a peace within you that others notice. Without trying, you become a witness to God's presence because His grace has touched your soul during the nights when you held a rosary with simple faith. Do not underestimate the power of consistency. The soul grows strong through simple, repeated acts of trust. Each night that you fall asleep with the rosary is another stone placed in the foundation of your spiritual life. One stone looks insignificant, but many stones laid faithfully build a fortress against despair, against anxiety, against temptation, against the storms of life. A fortress that stands not because of your power, but because it was built with grace. There may be nights when you fall asleep distracted or troubled, or without finishing even a single mystery. That does not diminish the grace of the gesture. God sees your desire, even when your execution is imperfect. He values the intention of your heart more than the perfection of your prayer. Sleeping with the rosary is not about performance. It is about relationship. It is about letting God into the space of your weakness. As you continue this practice, you will find that even your dreams are touched by peace. The spiritual battles that once tormented you during the night begin to weaken. The anxieties that once kept you awake lose their power. The temptations that once attacked you in the early hours fade into insignificance. Why? Because grace is the greatest force in the universe, and grace enters where faith invites it. Hold your rosary even when you feel nothing. Hold it even when prayer seems dry. Hold it when life is heavy. Hold it when you are joyful. Hold it when you cannot find words. Hold it when you feel far from God. Hold it in your darkest nights. Hold it in your brightest days. Hold it as you fall asleep, night after night, and let the mysteries of Christ become the rhythm of your rest. Because every night given to God becomes a dawn filled with grace. And so, my beloved brothers and sisters, when the darkness of this world presses heavily upon your heart, when the noise of life grows unbearable, when you feel small before the storms that surround you, take the rosary into your hand as you drift into sleep. For in that simple gesture, heaven bends low. In that quiet act, eternity draws near. In that fragile moment, before your consciousness fades, you proclaim with all the strength of your soul that you belong not to fear, not to despair, not to the shadows, but to God. Hold it tightly, hold it tenderly. Hold it as a warrior holds his weapon, as a child holds a mother's hand, as a soul holds its last hope. For the night will pass, the dawn will come, and you will rise not alone, but strengthened by grace. You did not see, touched by mercy, you did not feel, surrounded by love that worked while you slept. The rosary you held in the darkness will have filled your spirit with light. And one day, when your final night falls and your last sleep approaches, may the rosary be found once more in your hand-worn, familiar, trusted, your faithful companion on the journey of life. For the soul that has fallen asleep 1,000 times with thee, sacred beads is a soul that knows the way home. And in that final hour, the mother who watched over your nights will gather you gently into the eternal dawn, where no darkness follows and no fear remains. Sleep then with the rosary, and let the cascade of graces flow.